What's going on, everyone? Today I'm going to teach you how to play Circadians Chaos Order, which is my latest game, co-designed with Zach Smith. It's been a massive project. We've been working on it for about 3 years, but we are so excited about this game. We're loving playing it still, and we're hoping that you will enjoy it too. Now, as you can see, this is not set up on my table. This is instead on Tabletop Simulator. So I want to apologize in advance if I start, throwing the camera around and jiggling things willy-nilly. That's just a habit, and I'm sorry, I don't need to do that, and I'll try not to do that. I'm going to be teaching the game not in the most systematic or clean or most polished way. You've come to expect that in my channel, but I'm just going to be teaching it in an organic, natural way that I would teach if we were round at my house at a game night playing this game. So in this video, I'm going to give you a general rules overview, roughly what you're doing, how you take actions in this game, but I'm not really going to delve too much into the asymmetry. I might have to leave that to another video, and also the combat. We'll leave that to another video. But this will be the main gist of how to play Circadians Chaos Order. Well, this is a follow-up to Circadians First Light. This is several years in the future from that. In Circadians First Light, we have the humans who have found this planet of Rye, which is teeming with life. These sentient humanoid locals who are intelligent and interesting, and they have their own characteristics, really, as local people. The Circadians are trying to coexist, and they come in peace, and they're trying to build their relationships with, well, we've got the Draic, the Skaro, and the Larian people. But not all things remained peaceful. The Circadians have brought along their robots with them, and if you've seen any sci-fi movies, you'll know that sometimes they just get out of control, and these malevolent robots have caused a fair bit of turmoil amongst the land and amongst the local people. They're starting to not trust the humans and these robots that they've brought with them. But even more than that, we've got these big relics. These were things that were only foretold, they were prophesied, but people didn't know if this legend of the relics was really true. But one day in this cataclysmic event, they sprung up out of the ground, and all the locals knew was that these were immensely powerful. They were so powerful that they started to not trust the other factions. They wouldn't trust how they would use that power. So the best form of offense was to go out and to claim these relics so that the other factions couldn't misuse the power that they contained. Well, that's probably enough of the theme for today. So what's happening mechanically? Well, we've got these relics, and if anyone controls all 6 of these relic regions, well, I'll start off with all 6 because in every game it starts with 6 regions, then they'll win the game. Now, it's not going to remain at 6 regions. No one is going to be able to control all 6 of these in the first round. So what happens is, if you control the current round's relic, and no one controls all of them, then you get to claim this relic and bring it home. And now there are, so let's say Skaro did that, they would bring it home, they would get a benefit, they would come home with it, and now there are fewer relics to control. And the global win condition is to control all of the relics. So this is going to lead to a natural conclusion at round 6. If we make it to round 6 and no one has won yet, the person that wins this region will win the game, because that is the only remaining relic region. So that is the neutral global win condition. So all players always have a chance to push for that, even at the end of the game. But as well as that win condition, each faction, and this is where there is a lot of asymmetry in this game, each faction has their own unique way of gaining fame points. Fame points are tracked in their player color at the bottom or around the edges of the map. And so you'll see that they all have different values of fame that they need, and the AI is in binary, which started off as a joke, but it always stayed in the game. And so they have unique ways, essentially, of winning the game, because they have unique ways of gaining this fame. So if any of the factions max out their track, then they will win the game. So you've got two things to juggle. How are you doing on the global win condition? Do you need to stop someone from controlling all the relics? And how are you progressing towards your own victory? And so both of those are viable ways that the game will end. So it won't always be 6 rounds. It's a maximum of 6 rounds. It'll often be 4 to 6 rounds, which ends up being sort of 2 to 4, maybe 5 hours if you're playing the first time with a lot of new players. Okay, so how does the action system work? Well, I'm just going to pretend that I am the Draic player today, but you'll see that all of these factions, clearly with Tabletop Simulator, not all of these components will look like this in real life, but it does a fairly good job of emulating that. We have 2 main resources in the game. We have energy, which is the main currency. This is a currency that's used to fuel your actions. You're going to be able to pay to take different actions with your energy. And then we have gems, which is sort of this very versatile but luxury type resource that can be used in multiple ways, and you can never really have enough gems. So the game is going to have rounds, as I sort of explained with the relics, and each round we're going to roll through all of the phases. Each player has the opportunity to interact with each of these phases. We're going to go around generally in clockwise order, but the turn order slightly changes in ways that I'll explain very soon. So I've already simulated the setup and the set prices phase. Scaro, the blue faction, they were the first player, so they were first to do set prices. The other 3 factions have done that, and now Draic, which is going to be me, I get the chance to do the price. Now, what we are doing in the set prices phase is we are essentially picking one of the main 5 actions that we want to be able to take for free. We are also setting the price for other players to be able to take that action. We won't have to pay it. They will have to pay us and some energy also to the supply in order to take that action. So you'll see here, other players will have to play purple, 1 energy, and the bank, which is orange, 2 energy, so 3 energy all up to be able to take the build action when we get there. So Draic doesn't really have a choice. They have to price move, but they can decide which they want, if they want to move first or move last. Only one of these can be taken. And they can also decide which of their pricing tokens they want to use. So I'm going to simply use the move, the 4 energy one, 2 to Draic and 2 to the bank. And then when move is priced, this will move clockwise depending on who priced it. Okay, so it would normally move 1 to the left from the player, but because they already had the flare gun, we move 1 more step around clockwise. Okay, so that's the set prices phase. There are a few other things with it. If you cover over any benefits like these, you will gain the benefit immediately, so a gem, 2 energy, or a card. Also, if there's a little icon on your pricing token like this one, you will gain a card, which is the right part there. And then the left part says all of your discarded pricing tokens, they're going to come back to you. So we each start with some really powerful ones. A 6 energy one, which is expensive for other players, and then one that gives you research in the track that you place it, which will make a little bit sense later on. So you do all those things immediately. Once everyone has priced, then we move to the discover action. For each of these actions, with the exception of move, we will start with the player who priced it and then move clockwise from there. So discover, Leyrin would get the chance to do this. Now because they price it, they don't have to pay anything. They will do this action, and once they're finished, then we'll move on to their left, and Oxitay would get the chance to either act or decide, no, I don't want to pay that energy, I'll pass. So discover, and all of the actions are going to work the same way with this research track. We sort of have 3 rows in the research track. The middle row is just where your marker is, but if there are benefits along the way, you can gain them immediately as you move along research. So if you moved along here, you'll get 2 energy or a gem. And then moving past these, anytime we see a gem lock, not just on research, that means you're going to have to pay an additional gem as well as the action to be able to go past there. Okay, so that's the middle part. The top part is essentially what that action will give you if you take it. So generally, the further along you are, the more powerful the action will be. So this icon here means you get a research. So if you take the discover action, you get a research. A research is moving any one of your markers one space to the right, and that is essentially making you more powerful at that associated action when you get to that for the rest of the game. And then there is a bottom action, which is called the auxiliary action. This is like a luxury action. You're not going to be able to afford to do these every time, but if you've got a lot of resources, you can leverage those resources to make your actions more powerful. So this is an optional. After taking this top one, you may pay to do this. So this is saying I get one research, and then if I want to, I could spend 2 gems for another research. That could be in the same track, or it could be in a different track. So let's say that Larian decide, actually, I want to move along my recruit. And they only have 1 gem, so they're not going to pay 2 gems to take another research. So then they are finished with their discover, and we move clockwise. Oxatea see that this is 5 energy, they only have 6, but they're about to get paid for build. So they think, yep, okay, I'm going to pay you. So they'll just take 5 away and tell Larian to pick up 2. And now they're going to gain a research. They're quite clever. They're going to move up the research track and get themselves a gem. So they get a gem straight away. And now because you do the bottom action after the top action, they're going to spend 2 gems and boost a different research, maybe their movement. And this is going to continue until we get to Scaro, the player to the right of the player that started. And once they either act or pass in the discover phase, then they are done. Boom. And then I like to put them in the discard pile, and then we move on to the build. So you won't be able to get this pricing token back until you play your 1, or if you've played your 1, you won't ever be able to get it back. But don't worry, you can always take an action. They're never going to run out. Okay, so build. How build works is you get a certain number of build points. That's what this icon means. A build point allows you to build one of your buildings or one of your foundations. So we have 3 types of buildings in the game. We have the foundries, we have the outposts, and we have the strongholds. The foundries and the outposts are the same for every faction. The strongholds are unique. They're all different for each faction. So you'll need to refer to either the rule sheets, we've got the rule sheets over here, or you can refer to their player board to see what the stronghold does. But often it helps you towards your win condition, or it synergizes nicely with your player power. So with these build points, you can build one of these buildings, or you can build a foundation. Now, foundations are essentially slots that buildings can go onto. See, each of the buildings that you build must go onto a region on the map that is not your base. Your base is a safe spot that you can never lose, but you can't build on. So over here, we've got some foundations. You can only build in regions where you are present. That means at least one of your pieces is there. Either one of your fighters, your leaders, or one of your buildings. So if Drake were to take the build, they would have to pay Oxatea, well, they'd pay 3 total, and Oxatea would gain 1. And then, let's say that everyone else had already done that, and then they have 1 build point. So they can go, actually, I'm going to build on this slot here, and that is going to immediately gain them the benefit of the thing they covered up. So they're going to get a research. Ooh, what are they going to do with their research? Well, they might go up on this track, which is going to get them 2 energy. They could then spend that energy they just gained and 2 more to take the auxiliary action, which is simply to build another building. So they might spend 4 energy, and you can always build basically the leftmost of whatever type you want. So they might decide, yep, I'm going to build my stronghold over here, and that gets me a gem. Now, as well as having effect on the map, which I'll go over at some point, the buildings are also unlocking benefits. These benefits you won't get straight away. You only get the foundation rewards straight away. You get these benefits each income phase. You'll see there's this orange line that sort of runs through all the buildings. Each of your buildings that have been built will get you resources in the income phase. Now the foundries, their identity is giving you energy in the income phase. The outposts are going to get you cards, and the unique buildings, the strongholds, will get you gems. So this is a good way of sort of fine-tuning or balancing your economy. Getting buildings is great for the economy. Okay, so I'm going to explain what the foundries do in the harvest phase, and I've already said that the strongholds are unique to each faction, so I won't go over that. But the outposts, these ones here, these are sort of the military buildings. So these count as 2 strength. Each of your fighters, each of these troops is essentially 1 strength, unless you're Circadians, but we won't go there. They're essentially 1 strength. So this is a static, stationary 2 strength, 2 fighters on the map. So these are quite good at holding land and defending. As well as that, you can move from your base to your outpost for 1 movement point, no matter how far away they are. So if you had an outpost quite far away, you could move your guys from here to here for 1 movement point. Now, if you've already built on the region, there's no more foundations. In order for you to build again on that region, you're going to need to build a foundation. Foundations are going to unlock special abilities for you for the rest of the game. Foundations can never be lost, and that will flip over and it just looks like a little slot to build on, and now you can build on top. The guiding rule is that you can only have 1 of each building type on each region, so that's a maximum of 3 buildings and 3 foundations on each region. I'll go over these maybe in another video, or maybe at the end of this video. We'll see how we go. This is just a lot of info for something that is quite subtle. But yeah, if I were to lose this region against Zhao, against AI, those foundations, I would lose the buildings, the troops will come back to base, but those foundations will stay out. So I won't ever lose that progress of the foundations that I've placed. All right, okay. So I think that is the build action. If your buildings have a gem lock underneath them, you're going to need to pay a gem in order to build them. Same thing with the foundations. Now everyone has the same foundations, the same 5, but they are gem locked in different ways based on which factions thrive off which abilities, basically. Okay, so that's the build action. Once everyone's had a chance to do that, and you'll see as you move further along the build track, you get more and more build points. So you can really spam the whole map with your buildings, but you are going to need to grab new territories in order to benefit from that. Alright, so after the build action, we move to the harvest phase. Taking all of these actions and paying everyone for them in energy is going to get quite hard to do. It's going to be quite expensive. So this is some mid-round economy. When you do the harvest action, you're obviously paying the player, and you're going to gain the energy based on where you are in the track. So let's say I am here as Draic. I'm going to get 5 energy. It's going to cost me 3, so I net gain 2 energy. I also have these 2 cogs. This is sort of 2 regions that I can produce from. So you start off with only 1 cog. If it were 1 cog, you can produce from your base. You can always produce from your base, and you can also produce from your foundries, which is what that icon means. So if I had 1 cog, I could choose between this region or this region to produce. So I would get the energy from the harvest and then either a gem or a card. If I had boosted my harvest, which I did, then I would get to be able to use both of these. I can't use a region more than once though. So if I were to get down to this area here, I would want to have at least 2 foundries out. I will explain this foundation now that I've explained this action. Nice and simple. This means that you can harvest from all of your buildings, not just foundries. So they all get that foundry ability. Okay. So that is the harvest action. Now, on the track, this spot here, this is one of those immediate benefits. That allows you to gain one of these tokens, which are just lovely. First in, first served. Once they're taken, they're gone. But you can put this on over the top of any production that you own. Usually you want to put it on your base because you can't ever lose your base. If you lost the other region, then the other person that claimed it would be able to benefit from that lovely income. So, you can get research and get lots of gems, lots of energy. I might grab this 4 energy one. And so now my harvest is that much stronger. I'm getting 6 energy plus 4 and then this card. So that's pretty cool. This icon here is just to flip them over. Change the state. They get a little bit stronger, the ones that are out there. The auxiliary action for harvest is nice and simple. This is just paying energy to gain gems. Okay, once everyone has done their harvest or passed, then we would move to recruit, starting with Scaro and then going around in clockwise order. So recruit, you get a certain number of recruit points based on where you are on the track. Recruit points can be used in multiple different ways, but all of these are shown on your player board. So I'll zoom in for Draic here. Let's see if I've got it on the camera. Okay, great. So these numbers here are just your starting, where your fighters start. You also have some on the map, which I've already set up. Any fighters that are wounded are going to come in here to the left. These are the ones that are harder to get out onto the field. Each recruit point allows you to do one movement of a fighter across any of these thresholds. So if I had 2 recruit points, I could go 1, 2. This satellite dish allows me to put them onto the base. But I wouldn't have to do that. I could bring these 2 through. I could do it however I wanted to use those recruit points. You can also, instead of just doing these steps, the normal steps, you can also do the fast track, which allows you essentially go from the second sector straight through to your base, bypassing the first sector, but it will cost you an energy and a recruit point. So I could, with my 2 recruit points, I could spend 2 energy to get these troops out from the wounded area straight to the base. So fighters are being recruited to the base, and you will have to spend movement points to get them off base. So there's other steps involved there. So we've got those 3 types, and then we also have this one. Every faction has a way to spend excess recruit points. Say they've run out of fighters. There is a hard limit of fighters, that is the number of tokens. You can replace some with this. That doesn't add any to your maximum capacity. It's just a way of not crowding up so much space. So Draic could spend 3 recruit points if they like to pick up a tactics card. Okay, so that's recruit. Now, some factions, AI, they've got a nice and simple board. They don't have to go through any bureaucracy. And Circadians have a lot to go through. So there is asymmetry there. As you can see, there's also different little benefits from the 3 recruit point thing. The auxiliary action for recruit is quite an important one. This is one that allows you to deploy a leader. So we all start the game with 1 leader of our choosing, and they're going to start in one of those starting regions like I have done here with the setup. But this is a way to get more out. So you have a maximum of 3 leaders. These guys over here, these 3 are mercenaries. So we'll just leave them for now. They're the Raizu mercenaries. But these are my leaders. So Akrill is the one that I've got out. But I could spend 4 energy in the recruit. I can spend 4 energy in recruit to deploy one of these guys. If there's a gem on the top left, that means they're going to cost me a gem when I deploy them. And again, just like your fighters, they go, boom, straight to base. So let's say my recruit action, I did all of that, and I just had enough money or energy to do it. And I added J in, cost myself a gem, and the fighters, let's say I spent the 4 energy. Cool. And however you want to show that they're out like that. So that's recruit. This is how you get your leaders out, this icon here. Right, after everyone has had the chance to recruit, then we get to the spicy phase, movement. So, depending on if it's a move first or a move last, well, the move first is the most obvious one. The player who is move first is going to take the action first. If it's move last, then the player to their left, so that would be Scaro, is going to move first. And again, we're just going to keep going in a clockwise fashion until Draic would naturally be the last person to move. Okay, so just like the other actions, we have the system here. So this icon is move points. So you get a certain number of move points. So Draic here have 2 move points. A move point is moving any number of units. So a unit is a fighter or a leader or a Raizu. So these are all units. Any number of units from one region to an adjacent region. So that would be 1 move point. And then I have another move point. Now, a few rules that I'll need to catch here. One is that you can't end the movement with 2 leaders on the same region. So this is a legal move as long as I move at least one of these away afterwards, because you cannot fight with 2 leaders unless you're Oxatea. So there's a lot of exceptions in this game, but yeah, you can't fight with 2 leaders. So I would have to move these off. I could pick these other guys up on the way like that if I wanted to do that for my second move point. You cannot move over mountain ranges. So there are some of these next to bases, especially in 5-player, so that each base is only adjacent to 2 regions and not more than 2. You'll see over here, green can't get to there or there, but they can get to these 2. We also have some mountains preset on the board with some lovely art by Sam. You cannot move onto water like this unless you're Oxatea. They're the water people, so they can. So otherwise, it's just out of bounds. And now, in games that don't use up the whole map, we've got a modular board. There'll be some of these. Hexes out like this. You can't walk onto those either. So if there's clearly not like a one of these 3 types of regions, if it's just a mountainous kind of region, you cannot walk on there. That's out of bounds. So we have 3 region types. We have plains, we have swamps, and we have cliffs. There are cards that refer to being in these regions as well as abilities, and certain factions have affinities for those regions, which I won't get into now. Another thing you can do with movement is you can move through these tunnels. Now, these tunnels aren't active at all player counts just because the map gets bigger at higher player counts. So this is a way to keep things nice and cozy and intimate and have more access. So this blue tunnel here is available in 4 and 5 player games. That means that these 2 regions are adjacent like this. But we also have this tunnel here only in 5 player between these 2 regions, and they also are adjacent. So bear that in mind. That would take 1 movement point to go from those. Okay, so the final rule to sort of explain with movement, you can pick people up along the way, you can drop them off, however you want to do your move points. But if you move in where someone else is, you have both been pinned. So what that means is, for Draic, they've got 5 units in here, and AI have got 4 units in here. So Draic have been pinned for 4. In order for them to move through, they must match the number of units that the other faction has. So he or she could only move 1 of their units out. Now they could choose if they wanted that to be the leader or the fighter, if they wanted to get through to here and fight multiple battles. And let's say that then, this is locked for some reason. Let's say that then Oxatea wanted to jump in as well. How does this go? All right, so they are pinned for 1 also. They actually want to get their leader out of dodge because Draic is hunting leaders big time. Let's leave him behind. They come through here. They have to leave 1 behind like that, and they come into this region also. Now, AI, if they haven't moved yet, they aren't pinned for 9, they are pinned for 5. They're pinned for the higher number of units of their opponents. So they would need to add 1 fighter or 2 fighters to be able to move anything 1 more out of there if they wanted to do that. So multi-combat is definitely a thing. There's no limit to the number of factions in each region, but just the limits are the limits to movement that I've already explained, as well as you cannot move onto any base, not even your own. You can only move off of your base. You can't run and hide. You can't have your tail between your legs. You have to go out and try and hold the land. Okay, so that is the movement action. The auxiliary action is about upgrading your leaders. So many things in this game are upgradable. There's really a lot of engine building, so I've already explained the research, but you can upgrade your leaders also. So this is going to cost 5 energy, you'll see over there, and I can pick any of these leaders that I control, and it doesn't even have to be one that I've got out there, but I probably would want it to be one that I've got out there, and I could pay the 5 energy and flip them over. And you'll see now they're in the same position, but they're wearing awesome like heavy armor on the other side. Now, if there's a gem in the bottom right, that means it's going to cost me an additional gem to flip that character. That's often a good sign that it's strong. So gems aren't to be avoided, paying gems. It's often a good indication that your faction wants to do that. So I can do that. Now remember, you can only take each auxiliary action once per phase. Alright, so after we've done all of the movement, then we're going to move into the combat phase. I'm not going to explain combat in this video. I'm going to give another video explaining combat, but just briefly now, we are going to be selecting battles, and there's a lot of strategy to that, in such a way that every region where there's more than one faction present, we're going to be resolving battles until there's only one faction or no factions present there. Once all of that has been resolved, so there's only one or no factions in each region, then we've finished the combat phase and we move on to the income phase. So for the income phase, we have a few things that happen. This is the only phase that is like simultaneous, so everyone can just tinker away and do their income at the same time. You're going to gain all of your benefits from your buildings underneath, including this one, which wasn't a building. This is sort of simulating your base. This is just a default income. That's a choice of 2 energy or a gem for Draic. You're going to gain all of that. There might be some abilities that you could have in the income phase also. And then we also refer to this little track, this little table here. You're going to count how many regions you control. So your base counts as a region. So Draic controls 1, 2, 3. Let's say they lost this region, and actually let's say they lost this region also, because AI came up and beat up on them. Alright, cool. So they only control 2 regions. They are going to gain this benefit here, 3 energy and a card. Now this is sort of like a bit of rubber banding. This is a way of helping players out who don't have many regions. This 3 to 5 is about the zone that you would expect to be in. You start the game with 3 regions, so it's nothing too game-breaking or too powerful. It just allows you to redeploy. A redeploy is moving, let's say that it was like this, is moving any number of units from one region where you are present to another adjacent region where you are present. So often that is just used for moving off your base, and boom, onto that. There are many times when you just don't want to do that. Don't worry, it's not, you don't need to min-max too hard. This is something that can be ignored. It's just nice if you lose battles and you can get them out onto the map again. There is one rule that I will stress with this redeploy, which is quite finicky, but it's a really important rule. On that round's relic, so in the first round it's relic 1, and you will know that by the lowest numbered relic that's still on the map. You cannot redeploy from there. There's a good reason for that. These fighters are tied up trying to bring the relic home, so they can't redeploy. They're going to have to bring it all the way home, not move to another region. So they need to stay there. The redeploy could be used with these or these. Okay, but then we've got, this is the area that you're wanting to be hitting. If you can hold 6 regions or more, then you get to flip an attribute. These attributes are these unique cards that are out in front of each faction, which essentially explain the rules that they break, or their special powers, or maybe it's restrictions and limitations that are put on them. When you flip them, you're either removing some limitations or you're making your powers even stronger. And players have the agency to choose which of these they want to flip. Again, just like the leader flips, if it requires a gem on the bottom right, it's going to cost you a gem when doing this. So players can choose to flip attributes or gain gems. 9 times out of 10, you want to do the flip of the attribute. You'll gain the gem if you don't have any. If you hold 8 regions or more, which means you're really controlling a lot of the map, you can do that twice, which is quite powerful. And then what we're going to do after everyone's sort of gained their income simultaneously, we're going to check relics. Checking relics is where we check to see if anyone controls all of the remaining relics. In this case, no one does. Okay, cool. So what's going to happen is Scaro, because no one has won on the relic victory, they're saying, yay, we've got this round's relic, we're going to collect it, we're going to bring it home, and it's going to be forever on their player board as a trophy, marking their momentous victory, because usually there are going to be fights over the relics. This is a way to encourage lots of important combats all the way through the game, not just at the end. It's still very important at the end, but winning relics is important all the way through. So the benefit that they cover over, this is going on to the leftmost spot, they're going to gain a research and a gem for covering that over. Boom, like that, and they get to take that immediately. Now, each faction has slightly different benefits from the relics. Generally, what it's going to do is help you towards your win condition. If you collect those relics, it'll get you some research and some help towards your win condition. So it's heavily worthwhile looking after and going for that, I guess. Okay, so then after we've done that check relics phase, that's usually quite short. It's usually just the player who has got the relic, which is going to do something then. Then we go to the set prices, and we start with the flare gun player. Okay, cool. So that's been a lot of info. I'm going to go into the nitty-gritty details now. So if you want, you can move on to my combat video, but if you want to get all the other details, I'll jump in and do those now. Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about is the foundations. So what do they all do? Well, this one here allows you to spend 2 energy instead of a gem for gem locks if you want to. Now, that isn't every use of gem. It's not this. It's only where there's the icon that is the gem lock. So out here and out places on the research track. So this gives you some more flexibility of your economy. This one here, I've explained, makes all regions count as foundries for purposes of harvesting. So it gives you more flexibility. You might decide you don't want to build many foundries. You want to go all out on your military buildings, and you get this for some more economy. This one here, it has the +1 card icon. Now, this is not to be confused with drawing a card. This icon means draw a card. This is increasing your hand limit of tactics cards from 5 to 6. And this little pressing the button thing, because we've already got lightning bolts in the game, that means immediately do something. So this is immediately giving you 2 energy and permanently boosting your hand limit. Okay, and these ones which are gem locked for Draic, this one here, you remember I said that you can move from your base to an outpost for 1 movement point, regardless of how far away that outpost is from your base. Well, this gives you that ability for all of your buildings, so the foundries and strongholds also. So that's a way of making the other buildings a bit more like outposts. And then finally, for those of you who love research, who love to play around with the tech and moving up tracks, there's this one here, which is gem locked for every faction. That's just a good indication that it's strong. That lets you, in the income phase, you'll see how it follows the income phase line. That lets you, instead of gaining gems from your strongholds, you can gain research. So you can essentially spend a gem for a research for each of your strongholds. So like this, I could gain 3 research, I could gain 3 gems, or any combination of that, however I wanted to do that. So that's what those foundations do. Okay, I also haven't explained the cards. So the cards, I'll explain the combat part, the numbers and this thing in the combat video, but the bottom icon means that you may play that card in that phase for the benefit. So you're either going to be holding on to the cards for the battle phase, or you're going to be using them for the economic benefits. So either way, it's multi-use. You can pick when you want to use them. So this one is in the recruit phase. You'll see this icon here. If I play this card, I get 2 additional recruit points in that phase. So instead of getting 2, I would get 4. And there is cards for essentially every phase in the game. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting tension around, do I want to save this for combat strength and power in battle, or do I want to use it for the really tempting economic benefit that I can get out of it right now? Okay, cool. So pretty much all of the other weird edge case rules in the game, and there's not too many of them, but pretty much the rest of them are written in the asymmetries. They're built into the factions, and so I'm not going to go into how the factions want to win in this video. I'll do that for another video, or you can figure that out for yourself. I haven't decided that yet. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. I'm going to put the link up for the next video, the combat video. Hope you enjoy. Cheers.